Hello. So this video is going to be slightly different to the usual things I put up, because this time I'm not doing it with a script. Normally, with I don't know how many videos are on my channel now, something like 6 or something like that. All of them have had a script with a specific topic, and I write it beforehand, and I read the script, and that's how that's how I film my videos. But I felt like doing a bit more of a just natural sort of sit down talk and just sort of tell a bit of a story that relates to, a topic that I feel interests me and relates to, other videos that I've made. In the background, just got some Binding of Isaac gameplay, which, quick side note, I'm starting a Isaac dedicated channel. I'm starting it up very soon, so if it's up and running by the time this video comes out, I'll put a link in the description to it, but it might not be. But anyway, so this video I kind of wanted to talk about. So obviously I made a video sort of a couple months ago now talking about loneliness, and because it's something that I feel very strongly about, and it's something that I've dealt with a lot in my life. But the thing I didn't touch on in that video, obviously I talked about how I've never had a relationship or anything remotely close to it, but I have been on a few dates, and there's one, first of all, obviously those dates didn't lead to anything. Obviously I've never had a second date with someone, whether that's, to do with the person or just to do with me. Obviously a lot of the times they obviously just went into it for whatever reason. And there's one specific one I wanted to talk about because I think it's interesting, because it's the only time this has happened to me where I was the person who didn't want a second date. I was the person who sort of let someone go, if you get what I mean. I don't want to say dumped, because you're not really at that stage on a first date. And it's a slightly funny and kind of interesting story. So, it's a story that I've told a few of my friends, and some of them have found it quite funny. So I thought it'd be something that's quite interesting to share on here, and also just talk about that concept of being that person that sort of says, I'm not really feeling this. And it's quite a strange thing doing that, especially as a person who, really wants a relationship and has had someone say to me, I'm not into this, I don't want to do this anymore. It's quite a strange feeling to do that, and obviously I'll get onto more of that in detail in a short while. But let's talk about this date. So this was with a girl that I'd just sort of randomly met on Instagram. I think I followed her because she came up on a recommended. Her profile picture, I thought she was kind of cute. She looked like my type of girl, and I've been through her Instagram. I was into it, so I just followed her. Didn't send her a message, just simply followed her. And I want to say like a day or two later, she texted me and we got talking. And usually when I'm going into that sort of talking stage with someone, I sometimes leave it very long before meeting them. There's been times when I've been talking to someone for like a month and a half before even meeting them, which I've realised is a just terrible idea, because that person who I was talking to for a long time, a month and a half before even meeting them, I went out on a date with them. The date was shit, to be quite honest, and right afterwards they messaged me, said they're not looking for a relationship and whatever excuse. To be honest, I think they were just a little bit confused about the sexuality at the time, and they were coming to some sort of realizations at the time, so I don't really hold that against them. But with this particular person, so we were talking for about, I want to say about 5 days just over Instagram. I think we've played Minecraft together at some point, and usually as well, I always FaceTime the person before I meet them, usually anyway, just so one, I can get an idea of what they're like, and two, just so they can get an idea of what I'm like. You know, they might not like me, they might not like my personality in person and speaking, because obviously everyone's different over text compared to how they are in person. So that's what I usually do, and this time I just didn't, and I'd had like a voice note off them a few times, so I knew what she sounded like. And you know, we'd only been talking about 5 days, and she messaged me and goes, right, well, do you want to meet up tomorrow? And I was just like, you know, I felt a bit skeptical about it, but the sort of phase I was in, I was going through a bit of a brief kind of hyper confident phase, so I was just like, you know, sure, let's just do it. And so it gets to the day of meeting up, and she texted me, said, oh, I've got a funeral to go to today. So I just immediately thought, oh, okay, well, we won't do it today, because that, I mean, to me that makes sense. I was just sort of like, oh, okay, we can, you know, we can just do it another day. You know, I'm sorry that you've got that to go through and whatnot. And she just kind of went, oh, no, it's fine, I'll meet you afterwards. And I was just kind of like, are you sure? And she just said yes. So I was like, okay. I mean, I guess if she's okay with it, then, you know, I guess I'm not gonna say no. So it was a bit of a weird thing. And you know, the morning came, and I sort of texted her. I was like, you know, are you sure you're still okay for today? And she's like, oh yeah, I've been crying, I've had mascara streaming down my face and all this. And I was just like, are you sure you want to go out on a date right now? And she was like, yeah, I'm fine, I'll meet you in a bit. So I was like, okay. So obviously it's a date. I got dressed up quite nice. We were only going to, you know, down to the beach in an arcade, go grab some food, you know, it's, you know, chill, nothing too crazy, no big extravagant meal or, you know, movie nights or anything like that. Just chill, vibey date. So, but I still wanted to get dressed up nice, and I dressed fairly, I don't want to say formal, but I dressed quite smart anyway. Just because, I don't know, that's just my style. And so I got dressed up, put a nice shirt on, some nice trousers, put some lovely aftershave on, because I like smelling nice, jewellery, all you know, the whole 9 yards. And I think my sister gave me a lift, and I pull up at where we were meeting, and I see her. She doesn't really look like her picture. Like, she is wearing no makeup, and this, right, this is the thing, I don't want to, like, I'm trying to think of a good way to word this. Like, I don't want to, like, come at people that are just like, oh, you know, girls need to be wearing makeup to be attractive. It's not that at all. And it's not that she was particularly unattractive, like, you know, naturally, but she just didn't look like her picture. That was the thing that got me, because I'm just like, oh, okay, so you look a little bit different to what I was expecting here. And she wasn't really dressed up at all. She didn't look like she was dressed up for a date. And, well, she showed me the outfit that she wore to the funeral, and she was dressed up for the funeral. I had makeup on for the funeral. But it comes to this date, and I don't know, she just wasn't really doing that. So I kind of just went with it, and I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna back out of it. I'm not gonna tell my sister to drive away or anything. You know, I've come for a date. I'm gonna have a date. So I get out of the car, say hi. I go up for a friendly hug. She seems a little bit awkward about it, but I just thought, okay, it's whatever. And the first thing, and this is kind of a key thing, and once again, this isn't mean to slander this girl at all. This is just simply, I'm telling a story. And obviously, this was a while ago now. I go in for this hug, and I get hit with the worst stench of BO I think I've ever experienced in my life. And immediately, I'm just sort of hit with this. And I'm just sort of like, oh. Because a big thing for me, and I'm sure it is for a lot of guys out there, when a girl smells nice, it is extremely attractive. And obviously, the opposite has the opposite effect. And I know this sounds ridiculous, but the only way I can describe this smell, it's how I've described it to everyone I've told this story to, is sweaty broccoli. And it just sounds ridiculous, but that is the only way I can describe this smell. And she says to me, right as I'm having this thought, she says to me, "Oh, you smell of Lynx." And obviously, if you're from the UK, you know what Lynx is. If you're from outside the UK, it's like, I don't know what it's called. I think in America it's called Axe body spray. It's just cheap, normal deodorant. So I'm just kind of like, oh, because I dug out my Prada aftershave for this. Like, I wanted to smell nice because I like smelling nice. Obviously, I find it attractive when someone smells nice. So why wouldn't you? So I'm just like, okay, right, well, Lynx, okay, yeah, I just kind of brush over it. And another thing, once again, I'm not trying to slander this person at all, I'm just simply telling a story. I got the impression that she was a teensy tiny bit autistic. And obviously, I don't mean that in a mean way. Like, I think there's a good chance I'm autistic, to be perfectly honest with you. But it's that sort of social awkwardness. Like, you can kind of tell sometimes. And, so, yeah, I'm already just getting these kind of weird vibes. And the way she's dressing, she's wearing sort of, I don't know, clothes that just don't look like they've been washed. And there's just a few things that I'm just like, this isn't great. I'm already feeling skeptical about this. But as I said, I'm just going for it. I've come for a date, so I'm just doing it. So we do the date. We go to the arcade. We're playing games and stuff. It's a laugh. We are having fun, but I'm still just getting it's like kind of awkward things. I'm just like, we're just talking. We are having fun. I will admit, the date was actually fun, but it didn't feel like a date because she's still kind of socially awkward. But I'm obviously seeing it as a date, so it's you kind of get that awkward mismatch. And she's just telling me some like mad stories and other things. She was actually quite an interesting person, and so we're just going through the date, and I mean the weather was pretty crap, and there was just a few things, but we were just walking around talking. And anytime I was kind of thinking, what, maybe I'll try and be a little bit flirty. I'll try and get be a bit close. Obviously not touchy or anything like that. Just a little bit close. And there was just times where I felt like she was just kind of pulling away. So I obviously just stopped doing anything like that and just thought, you know what, I'm just going to treat this as a bit of a friend thing. And we sort of finished the date, and right at the end I ended up meeting her parents, which was also super awkward because it just was like, it's like I've just met this person, I'm already meeting her parents, and both of them picked her up, so it was just so awkward. So the day ended, and she seemed very enthusiastic with messaging me afterwards. She said she had a really fun day, she said she wanted to do it again, which to me felt strange because I felt at the time she didn't really feel into it in that way. And I just sort of had to, a couple of days went past and my replies were terrible to her because I was trying to sort of figure out a way to sort of get out of this. And I just sort of said to her, I'm going to be honest, it didn't really feel like a date. And here's where the sort of possibly autistic thing comes into it. She says to me, oh, I didn't realise that was our first date. And a little bit of context to this, because we'd had a conversation that said, oh, what would be your ideal first date? You know, it's a conversation that you sometimes have when you're in these sort of early talking stages. And something I said was like, oh, you know, I like, you know, a movie night in with some snacks and things like that. You know, but obviously if that doesn't happen the first time, that's obviously fine. So she was under the impression that when we did that, that would be our first date. Where, I mean, you guys can let me know what you think of this, but what I think is, when you just first, if you're having that sort of talking stage, when you first meet is sort of a first date. But I'll let you guys tell me what you think of that. But so she was like, oh, well, I didn't realise it was sort of like that. But you know, she was like, you know, I still do like you, and I want to do that first date. But obviously, it kind of, you know, at that point I just wasn't into it anymore. And so here's where I get onto the topic of being that person who has to be the one to almost, you know, quote unquote dump the other person. Obviously, I didn't dump her because we just, you know, we weren't together or anything. But, you know, be the person to be like, yeah, sorry, I'm not into this. And it was quite a strange feeling for me, because I came home from that date kind of feeling sad, because I knew I wasn't into it. So to be that person to just say, oh, sorry, I don't want to do this anymore, hurt, because I've been on the receiving end of that. And it's the sad thing as well. It's like, oh, someone is actually into me here, but I'm not feeling it. And it's a tough feeling, because, you know, you want these things, you want a relationship, you want someone to be into you, and you feel like, you know, someone's actually, you know, reciprocating those feelings. Well, I suppose in this case, not reciprocating those feelings, giving those feelings, and you're turning it down. And, you know, sometimes it feels like, you know, you've got a winning lottery ticket in your hand and you're not cashing it in. But I suppose it's the thing of, obviously, there's a saying which I've heard a few times online and things, and it's, don't go shopping when you're hungry, because you'll grab the wrong thing, which I think's very true. Because, you know, obviously I wasn't into this person, so I'm not gonna go for it when I'm not fully into it, because obviously there's only one way that's gonna end, and it's very, very poorly. And, you know, so it hurt to do that. And, you know, in a sense it made me feel quite foolish, because it's like, oh, well, you know, you've wanted this for ages, so why you not taking this opportunity? And, you know, that's just what I felt about it. But I knew the right thing for me and for her, because it's not fair on her to go into something that I know I'm not fully into, because in the end you're only going to get closer, or one person at least is going to, you know, the feelings are going to become stronger, and it's just going to hurt more when you do just sort of break it off. So that's just what I did. I broke off as soon as possible and left it as that. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's something I kind of want to talk about. One, because it's you know, it's a kind of funny story, but it was also quite a strange feeling that I had, especially someone who has dealt with that sort of chronic loneliness, and it feels like you're kind of just missing an opportunity. But you guys can let me know what you think down below in the comments. It's interesting. And since then I've had other dates which you know, haven't gone well for me because the person wasn't into me or wasn't into the date, and you know, but I'm sort of trying now to be, you know, not as, you know, not lead. Not lead. That's not the words I'm looking for. Not let the talking stage go on for so long, because you end up just kind of wasting each other's time a little bit. You know, like as I said before, I had the one that lasted for about a month and a half for it to just end the day after we finally met up, and it made it feel slightly pointless. Even though, you know, the talking stage was good and we had good conversations and, you know, it was fun, it still, you know, nothing came of it. And the most recent date I ended up going out on a few months ago, I'd only been talking to that person again for, you know, 5 days. The date was cool. It was very short because I just don't think she was into it again. And she was just perfectly honest with me and just said, yeah, sorry, I wasn't really feeling it. Which I completely respect that, because there's no attachments there. There's no, you don't owe each other anything. And she was just honest. There was no, oh, I don't really want a relationship right now. There's none of that sort of BS. It was just honest feelings, and so then there's no hard feelings there. You just kind of move on from it. But you know, the dating world is very strange, and you know, I may make a video about that at some point. But I feel like I've touched on a lot in this video. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You know, this has been such a completely different style of video than usual. I feel like I've yapped a lot, but you know, it feels nice to sort of sit down and just talk instead of, you know, a lot of my videos, they are quite deep, and you know, the last few videos I've made have been kind of dark because, in a sense, video making's a way of me venting, and so for this one, it's felt more like just talking, no scripts, none of that. You know, just less serious stuff. And you know, if you've enjoyed this style of video, please do let me know, and I will make more like it, more stories, and more just sit down talking instead of the script. I do love making the scripted videos because I can sort of rack my brain with it and properly go in depth on a topic, but this was something that just felt quite simple and fairly light-hearted that I could just sit and talk about. So I do hope you've enjoyed this video. I apologise if you play Isaac. I apologise for the horrible gameplay you've been watching, because it was just a tough run. But as I said before, I am starting a gaming dedicated channel. If you want to see more of me, I will link it down below. And yeah, that's all from me. Do let me know what you thought of this video down in the comments, and let me know your thoughts on the whole topic in general. So yeah, that's all from me. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy content like this, please consider subscribing. And until then, bye for now.